Tonight, Canada's pharmacare bill becomes law, laying the groundwork for a universal drug plan.
This is real progress.
Millions could soon have coverage of contraception and diabetes medications.
But it's very fragile.
But will the provinces and territories sign on? Contrasting realities. Unemployment drops as the number of Canadians going hungry soars.
Price of food keeps increasing, everything is increasing, and that's our biggest concern right now.
Well, I got you.
The race to save lives and the long road to recovery in the wake of Hurricane Milton.
This was just mayhem and destruction.
Tutu showers!
And the first Inuk person to play in the NHL shares his struggles and successes on the silver screen.
Today's a new day. I want to be better than I was yesterday.
Plus, a rare and radiant solar storm.
We got lucky. It was way better than I anticipated that it would be.
When the northern lights dazzle in the southern skies.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. We begin with some developing news tonight over questions about the Prime Minister's leadership from within his own party. Justin Trudeau is on his way home following a summit in Southeast Asia. Let's bring in CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapelos. Vashi, what have you learned?
Hi, Heather. Well, those questions have certainly been raised behind closed doors for MPs, Liberal MPs, for months now, in particular following so many months of sustained lower polling compared to the Tories, as well as lots of by-election, well, two very significant by-election losses. What's different here is the fact that there's going to be something formal ahead. And there are a number of MPs. The meeting started last week in caucus when the Prime Minister was not in attendance. He usually is. Those MPs tell me that there was almost like a breakaway group. Some of them called it a secret caucus after, in which they voiced their frustrations to each other and decided they needed to do something. Some of those MPs decided that they would speak directly to the Prime Minister. That has not happened yet. And other MPs decided that they would make a formal ask, a public formal ask of the Prime Minister. There are as many, some MPs tell me, as 30 MPs who will sign their name to such a letter, but none of them really wanted to go on the record confirming that they would be among them. Only 3 actually said that they shared that viewpoint. 6 of them said that they hadn't even seen that. A dozen said they knew of the letter circulating but hadn't yet signed it themselves. Certainly a lot of them are considering doing that, which is something, right? The amazing thing about the downfall of the Liberals right now has been, over the last number of months, that caucus didn't do something like this, right? That there was no public effort, that they remained as disciplined as they have. Well, things are really fraying, and I think this is emblematic of that. The Prime Minister just touched down on his way back from that summit that you mentioned, and he did not comment, but his trade minister did, saying that she was surprised by this news. They certainly did not know about it until they landed, but the Prime Minister, she says, Mary Ng says, still continues to have her continued faith. Heather?
All right, certainly a developing story here. Vashi Kapelos joining us this evening. Vashi, thank you. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister today was touting the progress of a national pharmacare plan while traveling overseas. The bill is now law, offering hope for Canadians struggling under the weight of costly medications. Now, the pressure is on the government to get deals in place with provinces and territories. CTV's Rachel Aiello on where the drug plan goes from here.
Legislation outlining the first phase of a national drug coverage plan passed Parliament on Thursday. The bill becoming law paves the way for the federal government to negotiate deals with premiers to provide diabetes and contraceptive medications.
This is real progress. But now we need the provinces and territories to come to the table and sign agreements with us.
The Liberals are aiming to have agreements in place across Canada allowing public health coverage for drugs such as insulin and morning-after pills by the spring. So far, BC is on board, but Quebec and Alberta have already said they want to opt out.
I'm not saying it's going to be easy.
The bill also sets the foundation for a broader universal pharmacare plan, with an expert panel being struck to make recommendations to the minister within a year. After voting against the legislation, Pierre Poilievre today reaffirmed that a Conservative government would not move forward with what he thinks is a bad plan.
We're not going to have a single payer system that bans you and union workers and countless other people from keeping the excellent private plans they already have. And
the Liberals earmarked $1.5 billion for the first phase of pharmacare, but the parliamentary budget officer estimates a full program would cost billions more. Advocates are celebrating the bill's passage as a hard-fought win for Canadians who skip doses because of the cost, and are calling on the government now to move quickly.
This pharmacare that we've achieved is something that could be so amazing, but it's very fragile.
Stakeholders, including those who represent employee benefit plans, say there's room for improvement before expanding to cover more drugs.
We absolutely agree. Let's get help to those that do not have coverage, but there's smarter ways to go about this.
The pharmacare bill was a central piece of the Liberal NDP Supply and Confidence Agreement. Today, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said he'll be pressing the Prime Minister to get deals done, but wouldn't commit to helping keep the Liberals in power until that happens. Heather?
All right, Rachel, thank you. The Canadian labour market exceeded many economists' expectations in September. The country's unemployment rate declined for the first time since January, falling to 6.5%. In addition, the economy added 47,000 jobs. CTV's Jeremy Sharon is breaking down the numbers for us. Jeremy.
Heather, this report is a bit of a shock for many forecasters. It basically goes directly against what most had predicted last month for Canada's job market. Youth and women between 25 and 54 largely drove the employment gains last month, while full-time employment saw its largest gain since May of 2022. The gains come after 4 straight months of little change. And if you look at the broader trend, the unemployment rate has steadily climbed over the last year and a half. This update shakes up the common narrative that Canada's job market has been steadily weakening. A stronger than expected jobs report like this actually works against the argument for cutting rates at the Bank of Canada. Traders and forecasters already today have shifted expectations, betting on just a 1/4 percentage point cut by the Bank of Canada rather than anything more. Now, some economists point to other metrics in this month's report as indicators the economy is still softening.
In this report from StatsCan, we also saw that wage growth has eased up a little bit. Wage growth is still running fairly hot. In the prior month, it was running 5% year over year. It came down to 4.6% in this reading. So that's good news. I think that's a better news story here for the Bank of Canada in terms of continuing on its path of reducing interest rates.
The central bank has cut its key rate 3 times this year and is widely expected to keep cutting. The question now is by how much. Its next rate announcement is set for October 23rd. Heather?
Jeremy, thank you. Boeing has announced cuts to 17,000 jobs, or 10% of its global workforce, in the coming months. The U.S. plane maker is citing delays in the delivery of the new 777X jet and major losses in the defense business during a month-long strike as the reasons for the reduction. Boeing is also under scrutiny for technical issues on board some of its aircraft and spacecraft. And 7-Eleven is closing more than 400 locations, or roughly 3% of its convenience stores across North America. The chain's Japan-based parent company citing slowing sales, declining traffic, inflationary pressures, and a decrease in cigarette purchases. It comes amid a major takeover offer from Canadian Circle K owner Couche-Tard. As we head into Thanksgiving weekend, food banks across this country are seeing an unprecedented surge in demand, adding to an already troubling trend. CTV's Sarah Plowman has the details.
Carrots add nutrition to a Thanksgiving plate, but not everyone can afford that meal. At this food bank, demand has jumped.
If you compare even September of last year versus September of this year, we're up 17%.
The need keeps growing across Canada, like in Mississauga, where nearly 60% more people are using a food bank than last year.
Numbers are moving in the wrong direction as wages don't keep up with the cost of rent or the cost of food.
Volunteers lean in but face mounting challenges. In Owen Sound, the question is, can this be sustained?
We're dipping into reserves now. We're seeing that the numbers keep increasing, the price of food keeps increasing, everything is increasing, and that's our biggest concern right now is how do we sustain these numbers?
Some charity leaders warn demand may one day outpace what they can provide.
We will do our absolute best to help you. But whether or not somebody has food today, whether or not somebody's utilities are turned on today, should not depend on how good a fundraiser I am.
Food Banks Canada wants Ottawa to bring in a groceries and essentials benefit, a top-up to the GST HST credit that already targets low and modest income Canadians.
You know, food banks are there for emergencies. They're meant to be there for people that are in sort of a downturn in need. It's not meant to be the backbone of the social safety net.
At this food bank, the team focuses on innovation to stay as sustainable as they can.
But the reality is we can only do what we do because the community comes along and says, we believe in what you're doing and we're going to support. So it is important to support your food bank at this time.
Besides the year-over-year increase in demand, more people turn to food banks around holidays like Thanksgiving, but also Christmas. One Christmas hamper program here in Fredericton only opened a few days ago, and already more than 200 families have signed up. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
Tonight in Florida, the race is on as first responders are pulling families to safety after Hurricane Milton struck the Sunshine State. At least 17 people are dead, millions are still without power, and the risk of flooding isn't over yet. Here's CTV's Joy Malbin.
Hurricane Milton may have left Florida, but in its wake, a trail of heartbreak and destruction. A record number of tornadoes shredded neighborhoods, torrential rain swamping Tampa to Orlando, and the rivers are still rising.
These residents are used to a little bit of flooding. They're not used to this amount of flooding.
The race still on to save lives.
Where's everybody at?
Police video shows officers wading into waist-high water, guided by a rope, pulling one by one a family of 8 to safety.
Got it.
Including this 91-year-old woman trapped, her home surrounded by water. Rescue teams have saved at least 1,600 people, and yes, animals too. But for those returning home, or what's left of it, picking up the pieces won't be easy.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I know it's material things, but I gotta start all over again, you know? Everything I had there is no good.
Gerald Gilchrist rode out the storm trying to protect his mobile home, but doubts he'll do it again.
You know, I've seen the road get flooded, but never like this. And this much damage. I mean, this was powerful.
And adding to Florida's misery, a storm of misinformation. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene telling her 1 million followers, yes, they can control the weather. And fueling conspiracies, Donald Trump, who's in a tight presidential race, claiming falsely Democrats are blocking people and money from coming into North Carolina, a Republican state. Biden knew about it, and so did Kamala.
Those who have been spreading these lies to try to undermine the opposition are going to pay a price for it.
The president is urging Congress to return to Washington to approve more money for FEMA. Disaster funds are running low after these back-to-back billion-dollar disasters. Heather?
Joy, thank you. A group of survivors of the atomic bombings in Japan has won the Nobel Peace Prize. That's the moment the grassroots organization found out they won. Nihon Hidankyu fights for a nuclear-free world. They use testimony from Hiroshima and Nagasaki witnesses for its activism against nuclear weapons. Coming up, attention parents.
The baby has a very soft, small airway that can become compromised if their chin drops to their chest.
Why FisherPrice is recalling millions of baby swings. Police in Montreal have arrested 2 people in connection with the deadly fire at a historic building last week.
There were like more than 200 police officers working on the case.
Police say one of the suspects, a 20-year-old man, started the fire by throwing a flammable device into the structure, and an 18-year-old drove the getaway vehicle. Both of them are known to investigators. A woman and her young daughter were killed in the fire. And in Edmonton, 2 daycares have been ordered to close down in as many days.
Things like children being supervised, that is a minimum safety requirement. So there's kind of nowhere to go from there if it's not being supported.
The license for Waverley Daycare was revoked over concerns about the health and safety of children. The province also shut down another daycare for leaving kids unsupervised. Over 240 children have been affected. Parents are being warned tonight about the hazards of letting a baby sleep in a swing. Millions of FisherPrice infant swings are now being recalled due to an increased risk of suffocation. It comes after reports of 5 deaths. Here's CTV's Garrett Berry.
According to FisherPrice, about 100,000 Snugga swings were sold in Canada between 2012 and 2022. Another 2 million were sold in the United States. The products are broken down into 21 different models. They hold infants in an inclined position. The company received 5 reports of infants dying when those swings were used for sleeping. According to Health Canada, the headrest and body support pad can increase the risk of suffocation if children fall asleep in the swing, particularly if bedding or blankets are added.
When babies are born, they don't have tone in their head or neck, so we have to support their head. And part of that is that a baby has a very soft, small airway that can become compromised if their chin drops to their chest.
Holly Choi runs infant first aid courses from North Vancouver, BC. She echoes many expert warnings. Babies need to sleep only on their backs, never in that inclined position.
You can understand that caregivers would be hesitant to move the sleeping baby and potentially wake them up, especially if they're sleep deprived themselves. But this is where moving them to a flat, safe sleep surface is crucial.
As part of this week's recall, FisherPrice is offering families $25 for proof they destroyed the headrest and body support pad. But the company says the product still can be used afterwards. One commissioner of the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission said that's just not enough and will let dangerous products remain in homes.
I'm sure the company is meeting their legal liability. The question for consumers and the voice of public opinion is, are they meeting their moral liability or ethical liability? And that's a tough one.
To get that partial refund, customers can visit service.mattel.com. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
Elon Musk unveiled his long-awaited driverless robotaxis today.
We'll move from supervised full self-driving to unsupervised full self-driving, where the car, you could fall asleep and wake up at your destination.
Musk showed off the 2-door Cybercab and a larger Robovan prototype. Tesla could start building them in 2026. Still ahead, the Jordan Tutu story.
Tutu showers! Jordan Tutu!
A compelling documentary capturing a career on and off the ice. We have a sneak peek tonight of a new film showcasing a Canadian NHL star. Tutu, the Jordan Tutu story, follows the Nunavut right-winger's tumultuous and inspiring journey as the first Inuk player in the NHL. CTV's Rachel Crowe-Spreadingwing spoke with him ahead of tonight's premiere.
The echoes of alcohol, violence, and abuse would replay in my mind, and I would transform that pain into a fierce rage on the ice.
It's an inside look at Jordan Tutu's struggle on and off the ice.
I sobered up in 2010. It took probably 2 years for me to really be comfortable and content in verbalizing my experiences. I'm truly grateful for all the processes that I've gone through in writing my books and doing this documentary.
Tutu got his hockey start in Alberta playing for the Spruce Grove Broncos in 1997. He was drafted by the Nashville Predators in 2003 and retired as a Chicago Blackhawk in 2018. He says to fully understand him, the film crew had to understand where he comes from.
In order to really grasp the lifestyle, you have to be present in those situations. And in order for Adam and the crew to really experience the way of life, you have to live it.
The film's producer, Adam Scorgie, says it was a once-in-a-lifetime adventure.
I'm not gonna lie, we were scared because we're city guys, right? We're filmmakers, right? So we were excited but nervous. And I do hope one of these times I want to bring my children up there to experience it, because it is a life-changing experience, and I'm honored that we were able to do that with the Tutus in the community of Rankin.
By sharing his story, Tutu hopes others will be inspired to follow their dreams and get help for mental health and addiction issues.
It's been a process, a healing process. I no longer carry that shame or guilt from the past. Today's a new day. I want to be better than I was yesterday.
Rachel Crowe, Spreading Wings, CTV News, Edmonton.
After the break, the Northern Lights dazzled during a solar storm. A solar storm has created a new round of northern lights visible to the naked eye, even in major cities across Canada and around the world. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth tells us why.
The Northern Lights continue to put on a dazzling show, lighting up the night sky across Canada, including in major cities.
We got lucky. It was way better than I anticipated that it would be.
2024 has featured numerous powerful solar storms, providing dazzling images caught on camera.
It has been happening so often for us lately because the sun is reaching the peak of its solar cycle.
CTV science and technology expert Dan Riskin says the sun, just like the Earth, has a north and south pole. They flip every 11 years, which is linked to the increase in geomagnetic storms and mass coronal ejections, which cause the northern lights.
So what was the magnetic north pole of the sun all of a sudden instantly goes down to the bottom. And every 11 years, it just goes back and forth like a metronome. And that is in sync with these solar cycles.
Astronomy technician Tiffany Fields expects even more solar storms coming soon.
I get really excited when I see those big forecasts. I keep my expectations low, but my hopes high.
Those high hopes could extend to a very large area. This most recent geomagnetic storm was visible in the US, Canada, Europe, and as far away as China.
And anybody who's got a good view of the sky, the less light pollution, the better. The farther north, the better. But it's nice when it's a big storm like this because it does sort of give us a chance to all see it together.
Riskin says counting recent solar and lunar eclipses and multiple northern lights, sky watchers have been spoiled in 2024. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
Tonight, we are marking the retirement of a legendary member of the CTV family.
40 years at CTV.
Amazing.
National camera technician Dave Brunet is hanging up the lens through which he showed our viewers the world for more than 40 years. Montreal was his base for most of that time, but Dave was dispatched to cover the war in Afghanistan, disasters in Haiti, terrorist attacks in Europe and the United States, nuclear threats in South Korea, several Olympic Games, the royal family in Britain, forest fires and elections across Canada, and so much more. His dedication and work ethic earned him respect throughout the network and beyond. On behalf of all of us, Dave, thank you. And that is our newscast for this Friday evening. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.